So wireless is pretty much how we get these tiny mics. We call them lavalier or lapel microphones into our mixer. Now, why would I use this over using a boom microphone? Anybody?
Like for actors?
For actors. Okay.
So that you don't see the mic.
So you don't see
yeah,
it.
and you can hear them better because it's on their body.
It's on their body, so closer proximity.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a lot of the points. Since this mic can be closer, it can tend to be easier to get the signal from each person at a higher volume, a higher signal to noise ratio. You can think of it like that. Because on a boom microphone, you are picking up that person, but it's a directional mic. It has to be further away because it has to be out of the frame. So you tend to get more personalized sound with this. Now, sometimes you can get some lavaliers if you place them inside of clothing or anything like that, that you're going to get a lot of the room noise not inside of it. It can sound really, how do I put it, in a vacuum sometimes. So that's the reason why we still have the boom sound, so that we can pick up the room tone. That little bit of the AC or anything like that still gives you a sense of what area that you're in. So that's the reason why we still record with both. Which this is the receiver, and this is the transmitter. So the lapel microphone goes inside the transmitter, and then that signal gets transferred wirelessly through radio frequencies to the receiver. And then this receiver has output that I'm going to place a 1/8 inch to XLR cable, and that's going to go into one of my mixer channels. So that's how we use a wireless system with a lapel microphone. Now, the way that you can tell on this one which one is a transmitter and which one is a receiver is at the top, the transmitter has a mute switch on this one specifically, and then the receiver does not have a mute switch. They both take 2 AA batteries. You have to press on the side of the left and right of each one of them at the same time, and that opens up the barn door so that you can access the AA battery. AA battery slot, there you go. Underneath the battery slot is also the infrared blaster and receiver on each of them, because on these units you can actually sync them by just pairing them like this when they're in sync mode. And that way any frequency that you use on the receiver is put over to the transmitter so that they reflect the same frequency. It's the same thing with frequencies that are audible, like from the 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, but this is the inaudible frequencies that are way higher than that. For example, this one uses 566 to 608 megahertz, which is way higher than the typical kilohertz or the hertz that you guys are used to for sound. The reason why we use those frequencies is they're not as busy as other frequencies. Let's say, for example, 2.4 gigahertz. You guys know what that is, right? That's Wi-Fi frequency. So that box up there is transmitting and receiving 2.4 gigahertz around that range so that each one of these computers can have internet. It's the same thing for a radio frequency, but it's not as crowded as a Wi-Fi box. Because again, imagine these around 24 to 30 phones, or any radio towers or anything like that. All of those can interfere with the signal, but we try to mitigate that by scanning around us and seeing what signals are actually good or bad. So we're gonna go through the whole process on how to set one of these up. And keep in mind, you need a transmitter and receiver per actor. When you receive your bag for one talent, you have your transmitter and receiver like we just talked about. You also have your lavalier lapel microphone. It should typically have a clip on it, and it's this little lapel clip. That's the reason why we call them lapel microphones. And you can attach it onto either a jacket or shirt or anything like that if you're doing something that calls for exposed wiring, meaning it doesn't matter if the microphone is shown because they're kind of just focusing on other things. So it's okay if I just mount the mic somewhat right here, for example, or if you're wearing a t-shirt, you can mount it also horizontally right over here on the cusp of a t-shirt like he's wearing, so that it's just clean audio. You don't have to worry about anything, and typically you're gonna get pretty good audio. But for most narrative and a lot of different TV shows, you want concealed microphone mounting as well, which on this one, you can remove the clip right over here. I just took off the little pop filter. I'm gonna put the pop filter back onto the lavalier microphone. And then now I could put tape, I could put any kind of mounting mechanism on this so that I could hide it underneath a shirt or anything like that, or any kind of clothing that someone's wearing. So that's the lapel microphone. And then you have your 1/8 inch to XLR cable with a locking bit on the end of it. This goes on your receiver, you plug it in like that, and then this little rigid part right here screws onto the receiver so that it locks in place. Now, why is that important?
So that you don't move and it pops out in the middle of the scene.
Exactly. Now, that's important for both the mixer. Yeah, so that it doesn't pop out or anything like that. And the same locking mechanism is also on your lapel microphone and the transmitter. So same thing, you push it into the slot, and the same rigids, you twist those metal ridges, and then that locks the microphone in place. Again, so that the actor, if they have to move anywhere or anything like that, it's a walking scene, they have to sit down to have lunch or something like that, you know that the microphone is gonna stay secured through all of that. And again, before you go for any big scenes or anything like that, you just make sure, hey, let's do a mic check or anything like that, and you know that the microphone is in place and it sounds good. So, there are multiple ways to conceal a microphone. A couple of key notes to keep in mind when you're doing that is one, this capsule, which is this top part right over here, nothing touches that. The same thing when we were talking about the boom microphone, if you had wind touching the capsule or anything like that, it sounds unnatural, it doesn't sound right. It's the same thing for if cloth touches it or anything like that. Have you ever had anyone like just rub against your ear like that with like a piece of cloth or silk or anything like that? Or even if you're using a Q-tip and you're rubbing it into your ear. Doesn't feel right? If you were to hear that, it doesn't sound really good. It's the same thing if you rub cloth on the end of the capsule. It doesn't sound natural, and again, if I'm trying to talk and you're hearing a bunch of rustling, it takes away from the immersion. So ways to combat that is try to go somewhere around the middle of the sternum area, right over here, between the pectoral muscles. Right where a necklace would also fall, inside the dead center, is probably the best place for miking in this frontal area. You can go a little higher, but if you go too high, you're gonna reach right at the throat area. And with these microphones, they are very sensitive to the placement. So down here, there's a good mix between the nasal passageway and your chest sound, which your chest sounds a lot more bassy, a lot more lower tones. And then your nasal passage sounds when you're nasally, and it gives you a lot of the sibilants and the high frequencies. And you wanna get a good mix of those two passages so that it sounds more natural, the way that you guys are hearing me now. So if you were to somehow mount it also at the top here, like for musical theater, sometimes you do have to combat with a nasal passage and it sounds really too high, and they adjust that on their mixing boards. But down here, and if you go right below the throat, you run into your chin that's actually blocking out your nasal passage, and then you're only hearing the throat sound. So that's where someone says, hey, it sounds really throaty or really like grungy or muddy. Can we fix that? And then you say, oh, okay, cool. Move it just maybe an inch and a half lower, and then hopefully that mitigates the sound. Now, you're also playing with a lot of different wardrobe things or anything like that. And oftentimes when you're on set with talent, there's a time crunch with, oh, you have 5 minutes to mic them up and then we have to go into a scene with someone else. There's always some kind of a time crunch or some kind of a, oh, we need them to do this in a reasonable amount of time. You can't take 2 hours to mic up one person, is the short answer for it. One way is just experience. If you know what kind of wardrobe they're gonna be working with ahead of time, try to either get someone to wear something similar on a day before the shoot or a couple of days before the shoot, and try to mic it up without it sounding rustly or anything like that. Or also, if there is a wardrobe day where they're trying on all the wardrobe or anything like that, try to ask if sound can also be present so that you and the wardrobe team can actually work together, actually have talent in wardrobe and mic them up so they can see, okay, that sounds really like, that wool is like really rustling with the sound. Can we try miking it over here or anything like that? And that gives you time to think about those kinds of scenarios as they come up. And before you give the green light of, yes, they're ready to go, make sure you hear what they're actually gonna be doing inside of the scene. If they're walking into the room, make sure that they stand up, walk into the room, and you don't hear any rustle. This wireless system requires 4 AA batteries, 2 for the transmitter and 2 for the receiver. I'm going to open up the barn door on the transmitter, slot in the 2 batteries, and then their on and off button is right over here. I just hold that for a second, and it illuminates, and that's how the transmitter turns on. I'm gonna do the same thing for the receiver now. Turn it on, and it turns on. Now, the thing to keep in mind with these wireless systems is making sure that your transmitter and your receiver are using the same frequency range. And you can see that on the back of both of the units. These are both range G, and it gives me the frequency range 566 to 608. It says the same thing on the receiver, 566 to 608. Even though these were made at different times, I think this was made in 2014, this was made in 2016, they can still pair to each other because they're made from the same manufacturer and they're the same frequency range. So let's say that I wanted to scan for frequencies. I'm actually gonna turn off the transmitter right now because you can think of each of them as one is blasting out a frequency, just like a pitch or a note at one tone at the exact same time. Just like, ah, the entire time. And that's 566. And you're trying to have the receiver hear that or actually receive that. So on the receiver, you can actually scan for frequencies around you inside of that range. And the reason why we do this in every location at every time is because you don't know who else is using that same frequency band around you. Or there's another guy, another sound guy just like me, trying to do his job, and he already scanned frequencies, and he's already in the middle of an interview. I'm gonna scan frequencies before I turn on my transmitters so that I know what he's using without having to disturb him or anything like that, and get a general idea of what I can use in my area. And other than just a sound person, it could also be a radio tower or any nearby electronics that use that same frequency band. So that's the reason why we always scan when we get to a new location, and even at a different time than if we scouted a location before as well. So the way you do that on here, we talked about the on-off button, but there's also a set button and an up and down button over here as well. You press the set button and you scroll down until you see one that says easy setup. After you go to easy setup, you press set, that's the OK button. And there's an option for current list, but I want to scan new list. So I'm gonna scan it right now. And what that's gonna do, and it literally shows you, is gonna bring up a little chart of frequencies, and it's going through each one of those frequencies, tuning itself to it and saying, this frequency, all right, there's low noise. All right, it's a good frequency. Let me move on to the next one. Okay, I get like a lot of noise on this one, bad frequency, take it off the list. And it's doing that for each sub-frequency from 566 megahertz to 608 megahertz. And it's compiling a list of all the good ones and giving you a list of that so that you can use them. And this usually takes around 30 seconds to a minute. It's almost to the scan. But after that, you select what frequency is good from that list, which hopefully we get 1 to 2 good frequencies. And then we continue with syncing it to the transmitter, which right here, I think it's about to finish. There you go. So now it's finished, and it says bank 16, there are 12 free frequencies in 16, and there are up to 20 banks, and they can have 20 frequencies each. So you guys do the math. So with bank 16, since that's the first one that's selected for us, you're gonna press set, and then it shows us what frequency it actually is on number 1, and we're just gonna select that one as well. Now, here's how you can tell which is a good frequency and which one is a bad frequency. Even from that list that it compiled for us, it's giving us the best of what it thinks is good for us, but we determine what we actually use. So we're gonna press the on-off button. That's gonna bring us back to the home screen. And over here, there are 2 different level meters. There's one that's AF, that's pretty much the signal that's coming from any audio channels. And then there's the RF. The RF is radio frequencies that it actually detects around you. So we're seeing on here that the RF is super low, and that would actually be a frequency I would use. Now I'm gonna try tuning it to a frequency that is not so good to use. Let's see here, I'm gonna go all the way to bank 1, which is really far away. And I'm gonna try going on the opposite side of the spectrum here. So I'm gonna select 606 point, what is that? I'm at 606.450. And actually, this one is even less noise. So I would probably just say, okay, let me just use this frequency. And I don't see any hits or slight hits or anything like that where it's like jumping and jolting out of nowhere, which sometimes the scan can be good, but it's only getting a snapshot of each frequency at one time. Right now I'm tuned to one frequency and I'm seeing it over time, whether there's something on there, there's actually no noise on there. So you're always just looking out for that noise to see if there's anything. Because again, if the transmitter is off, this should have nothing going to it. There's nothing going to it, and I'm gonna tune my transmitter to that same frequency. So I'm gonna turn on my transmitter, let it fully boot on. Now I'm gonna go on my receiver again, and I can sync that same frequency, like I said, to this transmitter using the IR sensor. So we're just gonna scroll down until we see the word sync. We're gonna press set, and we're gonna align these two, and then you see a little check mark. That's how I know that both the transmitter and receiver are now synced to each other. And if I look at the transmitter, it's on the same frequency as my receiver, and also on the receiver it has RF in green. That's how I know that it's getting high signal from my transmitter. Syncing the actual frequency that you use, you need to make sure that the sensitivity on your transmitter is good to go. And right now, as you can see, there's this little AF peak. That's letting you know that this microphone is peaking on your transmitter's preamp, which it is a preamp inside of here that's elevating the sound of this microphone so that it's at a listenable level. If it's too loud on here, it's going to distort from here. And if it distorts on here, it's going to be distorted on a receiver. If it's distorted on the receiver, it's going to be distorted on a mixer or recorder that you're using. So that's the reason why we always start from wherever the mic is actually plugged in and see how we can manipulate that sensitivity or that gain level, trim. They're all the same kind of phrasing for what we actually need to get done, of making sure that the microphone level isn't too high or too low for what we're actually trying to do. And plug it in, lock it into place. Now, this is a different mic than this one, so they're gonna be at different levels. So now I'm gonna just talk through it again. 1, 2, 3, hey, hey, hey. And I'm just gonna illuminate that so you can see. But now the lows are actually jumping to a suitable level that I'm actually used to. And I'm saying 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And they're actually getting to the top of the meters over here. So I know that this mic is working. So I probably just got a lemon on this lapel microphone, which happens sometimes. But you just make sure to do these kinds of tests while you're at the renting center. And our renting center is the equipment room. So if you're getting anything from the equipment room, make sure to check it before you leave with it, because it'd be unfortunate that you get something from the equipment room and it doesn't work, but it's even more unfortunate if you get all the way to your set and then you realize something doesn't work. Now on my receiver end, I want to make sure that I talk the same way. Mic check 1, 2, hey, hey, hey. Check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm seeing the levels jump a good amount. They're like hitting kind of the middle area. And I'm gonna go with that because right now I'm seeing that my receiver is at -6 dB. Typically on the receiver, since I already know the transmitter is good on its level, I'm gonna set this to 0 dB. And the reason why I'm doing that is because 0 decibels instead of the -6, it's not adding any volume and it's not attenuating any volume that's coming straight from the transmitter. And this way, I'm going to have the most flexibility if something's too loud or something's too soft on this end. Now, if I hear distortion first I'm gonna go back to my transmitter, make sure that it's not peaking or anything like that. And even if it's not peaking, if it's just going a little bit to the high levels, I'm just gonna turn it down by 3 decibels and see what happens. If I'm still getting distortion, then I go to the receiver and I say, okay, maybe that level is just way too high for my mixer to handle. And then I'm gonna turn that back down to the 6 decibels or even lower and see if that works. And then after that is at a suitable level, it's not hitting anything, and I'm still getting distortion, then I come over to the mixer, go to whatever channel number that I'm at, because we already talked about the mixer, and see what the gain level is, and if I can turn that down anymore. And if all 3 of those steps, I'm still getting distortion, maybe something else is wrong, and I need to talk to the manufacturer or the rental company about, hey, can I just get a replacement unit or anything like that. And again, all this should be happening at an equipment room or a rental room. This should not be happening on set for faulty equipment like that. A little bit more until I get to that -12 space. Mic check, 1, 2, hey, 1, 2. And it's hitting that level and it sounds pretty okay. I don't hear any distortion. I don't hear as much noise. I still hear that a little bit. But again, also talking about the polar pattern of these mics, lavalier mics are typically omnidirectional. So that means they pick up the same on all sides. So let's say that, I was getting some wind noise from the plosives of someone like just leaning down on the microphone like this. You don't have to have the mic faced all the way up all the time. You can have it facing to the side or also downward a little bit. It's going to change a little bit of the frequency texture, but it's better to change that frequency timbre that you're picking up a little bit than getting the plosive sound or the wind sound on the microphone capsule. So those are things to keep in mind. And also, I'm mounting it on the outside of my clothing. If I had this on the inside of my clothing, my shirt becomes a mini windscreen. And wind isn't directly hitting the capsule anymore. It has to go through my shirt onto the actual capsule. So if someone's wearing non-light, as long as it's not like completely through or like sheer cloth, you're usually getting some kind of wind reduction from just mounting inside of a cloth or anything like that. Other than the lapel or the lavalier being concealed, you also have to conceal the transmitter. Now, if I put this on a belt clip on black pants and this is sticking out, you're going to see this, right? So a couple of ways that we can get rid of that is using pouches, which are available in the equipment room. So I have this tan pouch here. Just think of it that it's matching the cloths of whatever I'm wearing. I would typically take off this belt ring right over here. Store that for later because I have to put this back on before I turn it back into the equipment room. Open up the pouch, slot in my transmitter. Make sure that I have a little bit of slack inside of there as well. And the slack isn't supposed to be tied down. It's supposed to be free that if it gets pulled on, the cable also moves with it. If you restrict it too much, it ends up just breaking the cable. So you just add a little slack inside of it, just in case. And also that reduces the amount that's going everywhere else. Put the Velcro around it, make sure that the antenna is still up. And then you also have a belt that goes around it. And they have these slots for different sizes. Take this out. This can be mounted horizontally or vertically because it has this hole right here and then it has this slot right here. We take this, and this is a waist belt. So you would have them go to a restroom or anything like that with the actual transmitter, have this slotted in a place that you actually want it to be in, and then you have them put it around their waist and have this towards their back. And then on the small of their back, you actually don't see this. This would be invisible if they're wearing a t-shirt or any like baggy shirt like I'm wearing. And now you've hidden the transmitter and also you've hidden the lavalier microphone. And that's pretty much how you would hide or conceal a microphone for narrative or TV in most cases. Now, sometimes you can get away with the belt pouch being over a really baggy shirt because they don't actually see the start of the pants or anything like that. But in most scenarios, you want to account for everything that they're going to be doing, and a lot of the camera angles that are typically done. Typically, is done from the front, mid-waist shot or anything like that. So the waist is inside of most of those shots. So am I going to put the mic pouch to the front? Probably not. If I put it to the side, there's a chance that the actor turns that way, and then now that whole belt pouch is exposed. So small of the back, somewhere inside of the center is usually the safest bet. If you're working with like cocktail dress or anything like that, then you're probably not going to want to put it somewhere on the waist, because that might show up as like a hump on like a person's back. That's also not appealing. So this can actually be converted into a thigh strap right over here for if you're actually doing cocktail dress or anything like that as well. And you're mounting the transmitter, making sure that you run the line to the front, somewhere inside of the center of pectoral muscles, down whatever cloth, and then over here. And of course you have the help of wardrobe team, the talent as well, so that they actually get the wire down there, attach it to the actual pouch, put everything in place, and then you attach it to the actual thigh. Or if it's someone, let's say that they're you have a male talent, they're wearing a really tight t-shirt. So you can mount the microphone pretty comfortably. Maybe not even with this mount. We also have smaller lavalier microphones, but that transmitter can't be anywhere up here because it's a full body shot. They're doing a wide angle lens. So what do? Put it on the leg. Why not? No one's gonna be down there. And if he's wearing long pants, it won't even show that much. They'll just think, oh, he's wearing like thick socks or anything like that. There are other pouches that you can also use, which this one isn't as bulky, but it does have a lot of exposed like Velcro and everything like that. A lot of like ridges over here. This is a professional pouch that I actually use for my wireless set, and it's a lot smaller. The cloth is way more small in profile and everything like that. It's skinny, and it can still expand to hold a transmitter like this. So those are the things that you look for. And also this little locking mechanism is also smaller than having to use a whole waist strap. And I could probably get away with this somewhere on like a tag inside of the center of the pants or something, and not have to even use a waist belt or anything like that.